The Vedas, Upanishads, and the Bhagavad Gita constitute a trio whose revelations may be regarded as the highest possible reaches ever achieved by mankind. The plumbing of the depths of the very nature of our life, which seems to have been the occupation of the ancient Vedic seers, is really an unparalleled adventure in the history of humankind. The Vedas are principally known as Samhitas, a body of invocations, prayers, supplications, attunements of spirit with spirit, and a vision of things which beholds a uniform, unifying principle in the highest as well as the lowest, in what may be visible or what is not visible, what is related or what is not related to the human individual, physical, natural, or religious, or even the occupations of daily workaday life. All these became the object of the attention of the great seers of the Vedas. That which cannot be known through ordinary means. Hence, the Veda is called Alaukika or superphysical in its power of perception, while all our normal perceptions are physical and personal as well as social. The association of the very content of the Veda mantras with ultimate facts of life has been deified to such an extent that one of the aphorisms of the Brahma Sutras makes out that the truths of life can be known only from the Shastra, which is the Veda. It is also mentioned in an Upanishad that the Veda, the Shastra, the scripture, is not merely a source of the knowledge with which one can come in contact with the ultimate realities of life, but this knowledge itself is a sort of divine breath, an exhalation emanating from the great reality itself. Tasya mahato bhutasya nishvasita metat yadirgvedo yajurveda samaveda. Dirgyaju sama or atharva, the Veda is the nishvasita, the expiration of the great reality of the universe, which means to say that the essence of knowledge, which is the constituent of ultimate reality, is in the Veda as visible embodiment, accessible means of final and infallible knowing. The mantras of the Vedas do not merely act as a kind of textbook which convey through their words a dictionary meaning of their contents or a stylish interpretation of the intention of the author. On the other hand, there is a specific characteristic of the Veda mantras. They are so because the mantras are not supposed to be written by any person. They are not compositions of a human author. Apaurushaya is the Veda, which means to say non-human, superhuman, spiritual is the source of the Veda mantras. From where does the Veda emanate? How did it come into being? The great advance that has been made in a doctrine of the world called Spotavada, on which subject intricate textbooks have been written, makes out that the sound principle, which is the vehicle through which knowledge of the Veda is conveyed, is basically an eternal vibration. When it is said that the Veda is eternal in its nature and does not constitute a temporal textbook, what is intended is not that the printed book, the bound volume, is an eternal body, but the knowledge is of a non-temporal nature. The non-temporality of this knowledge arises because of this wisdom of the Veda being capable of communicated through various degrees of the manifestation of a vibration which ultimately is supposed to be the substance of the whole cosmos. The universe is vibration. It is not a solid substance. In the beginning was a great vibration. This is the doctrine of the Spota. Do we not say in modern language that there was originally not a manifest universe of galaxies and solar systems, but there was something like a potentiality to manifest nebular dust, a kind of bang, sometimes called the Big Bang, at least from one angle of the vision of the modern science. There are many other doctrines of this split, the coming forth, the concretization of this great vibration. It is not easy to define as to what a vibration is, because we always have the habit of thinking that the vibration should be of something. Something has to vibrate in order that there may be vibration. But here, in the case of this peculiar cosmic vibration, it is not something that vibrates, but vibration itself is the ultimate stuff of things. Inconceivable is this position to our present mentality. because something like our concept of the energy pattern of the cosmic makeup, energy being a potentiality but not a capacity manifest by something else as a substance, the energy of the universe is itself a substance. Electricity is itself what it is. It is not a manifestation from something, it itself is all things in itself. It is a manifestation as well as a substantiality. The theory of sound has been studied in India in its most in-depth character. When we speak, we make a sound. There is an articulation in the expression of language. This outward mode of the manifestation of our inner intention through expression vocally is the grossest form of the manifestation of sound. This, in the Sanskrit language, is called the Vaikhari form of sound. The audible sound is the grossest, densest, most concrete form which the vibration can take. But this Vaikhari form of the sound, the audible, expressible nature of the sound form, has an inner content which is capable of classification in a fourfold manner. This fourfold classification of the essence of sound, which is not to be identified merely with the sound that we hear with our ears, this fourfold character of sound is designated in mystical circles in the Sanskrit language as Para, Pashyanti, Madhyama and Vaikhari. In the Mandukya Upanishad, which is incidentally an exposition of Pranava or Om, a suggestion is made of the possibility of identifying the stages of sound with the degrees of reality. That means to say, the highest form of sound potential, which is not a physical content but a highly rarefied form of universality, is just the same as the reality as it is in itself. The four stages of sound which constitute Pranava or Omkara are set in tune with the four manifestations of the ultimate in this Upanishad. Today we know as Virat, Hiranyagarbha, Ishvara and Brahman. The identification of the degrees of the manifestation of sound with the degrees of the manifestation of reality will give us some hint as to why it is said that the Veda, which is the embodiment of the highest knowledge in the form of potential sound, is the emanation of the Supreme Being Himself. Knowledge is not an uttered word. It is a potentiality, it is a possibility, it is a capacity for expression in a particular form. The Vaikhari form of the sound, while it is the grossest form of articulation, is motivated by a vibration which is subtler than itself, and this subtle background of the Vaikhari form of the sound is inaudible. The inaudible potentiality of the audible sound, Vaikhari, is Madhyama. The inaudible form of the sound is also an expression of a pressure felt from another thing that is behind it, called the Madhyama, a still more rarefied form. But the most rarefied form of sound is Para. The word is very significant indeed. It is absolute. Amatra is the word used in the Mandukya Upanishad to designate this soundless rarefication of the sound, whereby the visible becomes the cosmic content, and it is no more a sound but the very background of the manifestation of sound. We have 5 sense organs. There is a particular sense which receives vibrations in the form of color, the eyes. Another organ receives the vibration in the form of audible sound. A third organ receives vibration in the form of taste. A fourth one by means of tangibility, and a fifth one by smell. We seem to feel that there are 5 things in this world: that which can be seen or heard or touched or tasted or smelled. They are not 5 things, but 5 types of impact that a single energy has upon 5 types of receptive potentialities or capacities in ourselves. We receive a common content of the cosmos in 5 different ways. As we can conduct the action of electric energy in different ways, as heat or cold or motion or whatever. The chanting of Om, the recitation of the Pranava, is supposed to create in us a sympathetic vibration in the personality commensurate with the deepest potentialities of the universal vibration. When you recite Om, chant Om systematically, you will feel, if you have done it properly, there is a slow rarefication, a passing from the gauze to the subtle of the sound that you make in the chanting of Om, until a state is reached. It is one with thought itself. It is one with thought and one with the whole being. The higher is the potency of a homeopathic medicine, the greater is the action that it has upon the body, because the higher potency alone can touch the higher levels of our being, whereas the lower potencies can act only on the lower levels, such as the physical body. Our personality is equally a systematized arrangement of degrees of reality, as we conceive the same degrees in cosmos. As we have Virat, Hiranyagarbha, Ishvara and Brahman, the visualization of the Supreme Being in a fourfold manifestation, we have also a corresponding fourfold manifestation in our own selves by way of the manifestation of our consciousness in waking, in dreaming, in sleep, and in a transcendent something which we are, the Atman pure and simple. The Atman in us, the self that we are, the true being of ours, corresponds in our microcosmic personality to the macrocosmic Brahman, the one with an rapport with the other. The condition we call sleep is the potentiality for outer manifestation in the form of dream and waking. This potential causal state of our personality is sympathetic with the universal causal condition known as Ishvara. The dream condition, where we have a translucent manifestation of the mind which is neither causal nor actually expressed, is comparable with a faintly manifest condition of the universe in a state called Hiranyagarbha. The actual waking state, where we are conscious of externality in its true color. In this state we are one with Virat. The Virat is one with us in our waking state. Through our visualizations by means of sense organs, we are actually touching the cosmic reality daily from moment to moment in the form of this Virat Swarupa. The many heads and eyes and ears which the Virat appears to have, as told to us by the Vedas, the Bhagavad Gita, etc., are our own heads and eyes and feet. They are not somewhere else. A transportation of our individual perceptual manner to a cosmic position would suddenly transport us from the individual to the Virat in a single moment. It requires a moment only for us to transport ourselves to the Virat condition, not years of scratching the head. The Veda, therefore, in its form as an embodiment of eternal knowledge, does not remain as a textbook for a teaching in a pedagogical manner in a college or a university. It is a spiritual content for daily meditation. Today, researchers have gone to the extent of seeing through the inner meaning of the Veda mantras, many a thing which are more than mere prayers to deities or gods of the cosmos, but even instructions on our daily fulfillments of our requirements, even political, social, economic and technological. The Veda is difficult to understand because of its fourfold implication. Disciples, great sages, appear to have gone to Veda Vyasa one day and requested the great master, teach us the Veda. We are told that a cryptic reply of Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa to the disciples was Ananta Vai Veda. Infinite is the Veda. Endless is the meaning of the Veda mantras. The endlessness of the content of the Veda is in its fourfold or fivefold inclusiveness of approach, which is not always available to us humans that we are. The objective world is presented to our consciousness in one manner. This also is one method of the perception of reality. The world as an externally presented content to the sense organs and the mind and the intellect. But reality is not exhausted only by the externality which the world is. It is also the internality which the subjective individual is. The Adhyatma or the individual is one viewpoint from which the knowledge of the Veda can be interpreted. The Adhibhuta or the external form of it is another altogether. But there is a third way which is predominantly known as the Adhidhaiva interpretation. The mantras being used as invocations of a transcendent content present and operating between the Adhyatma and the Adhibhuta, myself and yourself, connecting both of us. This invisible content permeating through all that is objective as well as subjective is the God, the divinity that is adored through the Veda mantras under the name Indra, Mitra, Varuna, Agni, etc. Ekam sadvipraha bahudha vadanti. The Bahu or the manifoldness of the designations or names of these gods signify the varieties of approach possible in respect of the manifestation of this reality through various angles. The objective side is one, which is called Adhibhuta. The subjective side is another, which is Adhyatma. A transcendent side is the third one altogether, which is Adhidhaiva. There is a fourth one, which is Adhidharma, a principle of cohesive activity to which I made some reference yesterday. Reality also operates in this universe as rule, law, order, system, symmetry and rhythm. This is dharma. Adhidharmatva is one aspect of the manifestation of reality. There is a fifth form, which is Adhyajna, the activities of the cosmos. The manifestations right from creation onwards down to the lowest dust of the earth, including our own daily activities individually. The ritualistic, activistic and relative performances of individuals in respect to the environment is the yajna that we perform, a sacrifice as it were, the attempt that we make to commune ourselves with the reality outside and above by social relationship, communication, work, sacrifice, cooperation, service, charity, sympathy, love, affection, etc. So, at least among the manifold forms in which the knowledge of the Veda can be conceived, 5 basic factors can be stated, namely the aspect of Adhibhuta, Adhyatma, Adhidaiva, Adhidharma and Adhiyajna. This being the inner potentiality of the meaning of the Veda mantras, ordinary linguistic interpretation or translation in an ordinary fashion will not bring about the true meaning of the Veda mantras. Ages passed in this manner when the visualization of the ultimate being through the mantras was available only to the great sages like Vasishtha, Vishwamitra, Gautama, Atri, Bharadwaja and many others mentioned as the seers of the mantras, mentioned at the caption of the suktas of the Vedas themselves. The traditional concept of the Veda is that it is not a historical document, as sometimes modern readers of the Veda opine, but it is an indivisible presentation in the degrees in which it can be conceived, but not temporally manifest, one coming after the other. That is to say, the vision of life through the Veda is a complete whole, not conceived merely chronologically in historical fashion, one succeeding the other as effect produced from the cause, but a sudden possibility of the manifestation of the vision of life in a manifold manner simultaneously. Not that we do one thing now and another thing tomorrow. We pray today, work tomorrow, and achieve our goal day after tomorrow. It is not like that. Simultaneity is our being, simultaneity is our perception, simultaneity is our relationship with things. The world acts in a simultaneous manner. There is no chronology in natural history. Therefore, we cannot even say that God created the world at some time in the past, which would be a child's conception of the creation of the world, as if there has been a slow coming down of things in a historical fashion. It is rather a logical development, a deduction as it were from a premise, than a chronological coming like the marching of people in a queue, one following the other. There is a deduction. One follows the other in the process of creation, no doubt. But this one following the other is a logical following and not a chronological following. All this makes the attempt to understand the Veda mantras a difficult thing. This is the reason why the Veda is not taught in the form of a lecture or a teaching in the manner with which we are accustomed today, but it is considered as a holy yajna performed by a dedicated, devoted, holy disciple seated before a holy master. The Veda mantras are not studied in the manner we study textbooks of mathematics, physics, history, geography, etc. There is at the very initial stage itself a dedication. Spirit pervades even this devoted seatedness in the vicinity of a master, and there are techniques of teaching of the Vedas. There are techniques of receiving, chanting and imbibing, not only the manner of recitation but also the manner of contemplation. The Veda mantras are not merely prayers verbally offered to gods, though that also may be one of the meanings. They are central indications for the highest meditations possible. The Upanishads are the extract of this visualization of the possibility of meditation on the inner significance of the Veda mantras, and we have been saved the trouble of personally going into this big forest of implications of the meaning of the Veda mantras. The sages of the Upanishads have been very kind, they have done the work for us. This implication of a great variety in nature in respect of the inner meaning of the Veda mantras is the Upanishad. It is the tattva, the quintessence, the final word or the import of the Veda mantras. So the Veda Samhitas and the Upanishads stand not as two different approaches, but one complementing the other, one explaining the other, one actually vitally related to the other. The Upanishad is the tattva, the inner intention of the Veda mantras. For the reason mentioned that there are varieties of approaches presented by the Vedas, the Upanishad also becomes a very difficult thing to understand. It is not just philosophy, it is not theorizing or argumentation, it is not logical thought, but direct grasp, intuitively made available in deep meditations. Both the Veda mantras and the Upanishads constitute meditations proper. They are spirituality embodied in the form of these holy texts available to us today. The trio that I mentioned, Vedas, Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita, form a body of friendly approaches, one corresponding to the other from a different angle of vision, one supplementing the other, and one making the other more explicit for purpose of understanding and practice. In a way, we may say the Veda mantra is the highest of visions and realizations. That is why the Veda mantra is considered as the most sacred text of the religion of the country. Nothing can equal it. No philosophy can exceed the reaches of the Veda mantras in their contents. Yet, because of their manifold possibilities, human minds found it hard to extract the inner meaning in daily practice. The visualization of the inner depth of the Veda mantra is the Upanishad proper. It is the secret meaning of the Veda. That is the meaning of the word Upanishad. While the word Upanishad has many other meanings, this is one of the meanings. A secret doctrine is the Upanishad. And the grand visual form spiritually of the ultimate reality in practical daily life is the Veda mantra in its action. The more we are taught a particular doctrine, the more we find it difficult to understand it as time passes, because of the inability of the human mind to properly place itself in the context of the teaching, which is so comprehensive that a fractional approach of the mind to which it is accustomed finds it difficult to accommodate itself to this larger approach. The Bhagavad Gita is the last word in the interpretation of the spiritual content of a complete vision of life, where everything is laid before us in a most intelligible manner. The perfect knowledge of the Veda and the Upanishad is perfectly presented in a most perfect manner by the great perfect master himself. If we read every day the mantra, the verse that the Bhagavad Gita is the milk, as it were, of the Upanishads. If the Upanishads are the milk of the Veda mantras, the Bhagavad Gita is the milk of the Upanishads. It is the quintessential essence of spiritual teaching. The various approaches, Adibhuta, Adhyatma, Adideva, etc., implied but not explicitly available in the Veda mantras or the Samhitas. The meaning which is considered only from a meditational point of view in the Upanishads is practically presented before us as a daily instruction for our life from morning to evening in the greatest possible detail. We find today that even the Bhagavad Gita is difficult to understand. The number of commentaries that have been written on it, hundreds and hundreds in number, indicate that even this most explicit teaching, which is the Bhagavad Gita, that is supposed to be clearer than even the intentions of Upanishads and the mantras, that also is so hard that what actually is the final word of the Gita is not known to most of us. The difficulty that we feel in our daily life is the adjustment of ourselves to the various calls of the sides of the personality which are connected to the sides of the reality objectively. We cannot at one stroke think all aspects of our life. Spiritual life is a total vision of life. It is the totality of its approach that makes it a very difficult thing for us to think in the mind and put it into practice. We may do something in a particular way, we may think also from one angle of vision, but all aspects of the matter cannot be taken into consideration at the same time. Spirituality is the approach of the soul. It is not an activity of the mind or an argumentation of the intellect or the reason. It is not a work that is done by your body or the limbs or the organs. It is soul rising into the level of its aspiration being fulfilled, the inner soul calling the universal soul. When the soul within us summons the soul that is above, we are in a state of spirituality. All life that is spiritual is soul in action. If our spiritual life gets limited only to certain activities which are the work of our limbs or organs or even only mental processes, they would to that extent cease to be entirely spiritual. The spirituality of an approach is to be seen from the satisfaction that we feel by the implementation of that approach. The japa that we perform, the meditation that we conduct, or the communion that we try to establish in our depths, in our spiritual practice, will have to result in an experience of a greater potentiality and experience in ourselves, a greater strength, a greater feeling of security, a feeling of betterment, both physically in the form of health, but also mentally in the form of a satisfaction that was not earlier. To rise from meditation in a dissatisfied way would not be an indication that the meditation has been conducted properly. The ancient system of preparedness or adhikaritva for spiritual practice has to be emphasized even today. It is not that anyone and everyone that can suddenly step into the path of the spirit at one stroke, though everyone is eligible for it one day or the other, provided the necessary discipline is undergone. Everyone is eligible for everything, but under conditions of the required discipline that is made available in oneself. So, the life that is spiritual life that we call, is the highest achievement that we can expect in this life. It is the highest point that we can reach in the evolution of the human species, beyond which there can be nothing, because the concept that is spiritual is basically non-temporal. The soul in us is not a temporal unit, it is not something that is moving in time. We ourselves in our roots are not temporal motions or the flux of creation. Our aspiration for eternity and an unending life is the argument of something within our own self that is unending in itself. God speaks to us through the voice of our own spiritual aspirations. Our conscience is the voice of God. Thus, these approaches, these proclamations, these revelations made available to us through the Vedas, the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita are the touchstones of reality, the treasures of mankind, our bosom friend, our Vadimekam. They are not merely books, they are visible God Himself. That is why there is such a holy and exalted mood that we feel in the presence of the visible form of this knowledge, as the Veda or the Upanishads or the Bhagavad Gita, because they are verbally embodied forms of the highest revelations. The Vedic sages, the masters of the Upanishads, and in the case of the Bhagavad Gita, the great vision of Bhagavan Sri Krishna himself. Even a study of the Veda mantras, even a mere recitation of them, is supposed to be capable of purifying ourselves. A mantra is that which protects, supports, and gives security to anyone who even thinks of it and recites it. Manana trayate iti mantra. By a contemplation of it, it is protecting you every moment. It is a talisman that you are carrying with you always, the Veda mantra. Particularly the Gayatri, which is considered as the essence of Vedic teaching for various reasons, which we need not consider here. The spiritual vision of life, therefore, is the highest vision of life. It is highest not merely in the sense of the pinnacle of a pedestal that we ascend from the lower to the higher. It is a comprehensive outlook from all angles of vision possible. It is all content, all substance, all soul, all fulfillment. This is why we call it the very soul of all things. To be spiritual is not to be in a state of occupation. It is not just to appear in a religious manner. It is not a mood which is otherworldly, but a purification of the personality in such a way that it becomes a friend and collaborator, a friend, philosopher and guide that which is one with all things in the deepest spirits. A spiritual seeker is no more an ordinary human being. If the seeking is truly spiritual and it is an emanation from the soul, it transforms the human into that which is superhuman at once. Great glory is spiritual seeking. Great achievement is spiritual seeking. Great possession is spiritual seeking. And nothing can be greater than this achievement. Health and wealth follow from a truly spiritual vision of life. Every kind of protection from all corners of the earth follow. Sarva disho bali masmai haranti, says the Upanishad. The great soul who is tuned up to the soul of the cosmos in a spiritual vision of things receives tribute, as it were, from every quarter of the world. Sarva disho bali masmai haranti. As everyone wishes protection to one's own self, everyone will wish a protection to you. All creation will wish your welfare, because in your spiritual aspirations you have ceased to be yourself, you have become everyone. Because in your spiritual aspirations you are no more yourself, but you are all people. Everyone wishes you welfare. You are not merely the friend of all, everyone also is your friend. Yatheha kshodita balaha mataram paryopasate evam sarvani bhutani agnihotram avasate, says the Chandogya Upanishad, indicating thereby that as children cry for food seated around their mother, so do all living beings cry, as it were, seated around this great personality who is the highest spiritual potential possible, and they wish their welfare. The Vishwa, who is the individual, becomes Vaishwanara, who is the cosmic. Through the gradations of ascent, Vishwa, Taijasa, Prajna and Atman or Turiya, individually and cosmically through Virat, Hiranyagarbha, Ishvara and Brahman, this great spiritual vision gets materialized in direct experience. Thus, the spiritual vision of life is also the modus operandi of our daily activity in life. The spiritual vision is the actual constitution of the cosmos, and the administration of the universe is conducted from the point of view of this great vision, which is spiritual, whose inner intention and the variety of approach is available to us in these great texts mentioned, the Vedas, the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita. Hari Om Tat Sat. Om Purnamada Purnamadam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavaşişyate. Om Shanti Shanti.